Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Patrick Maynard. I'm an emergency manager with the Ventura County Sheriff Office of Emergency Services. Welcome to our Thomas Fire Burn Area Informational Town Hall meeting tonight. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce a couple of folks out in the audience. Commander Rick Barrios from West County Patrol Services of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, in the back there. Mr. Martin Hernandez, council member from the city of Santa Paula. Where are you, Martin? Where'd you go? There you are, perfect. Betsy Cervantes from Senator Hannibeth Jackson's office. And also Division Chief John McNeil from the Ventura County Fire Department, who will be speaking later. And also Assistant Fire Chief Norm Plott for the city of Santa Paula Fire Department. And last but certainly not least, Supervisor Kelly Long, who will kick us off with a couple of words.
And also I wanted to not forget Mike Powers, our CEO for Ventura County, is here as well. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for being here and caring about your property, your community. After the Thomas Fire disaster has been on our mind since December 4th. And it's very important that we are here today to learn about what happens after a fire and how can we reduce the risk. So I'd like to say thank you to Cal OES, also Cal Fire we have FEMA here, our fire departments. I just can't say enough, but thank you so much. Also our first responders who've done a great job, along with our county offices as well. So I'm gonna turn it over. Just briefly want to just thank you very much for being here tonight, and to make sure that you visit VenturaCountyRecovers.org for any information that maybe you heard tonight and forgot about. You can always go to VenturaCountyRecovers.org to get further information, or my office, either way. So thank you very much, and we'll talk later.
Okay, so before we jump into the presentations, just a couple of housekeeping items. Restrooms out the back door, if you need those. Also, you should have received a green piece of paper. To keep things moving tonight, we've passed out those pieces of paper. If you have questions, please write down those questions as you hear them, think of them. Turn that in at the back table. They're going to compile all those questions. And the last item of our agenda tonight, we're actually going to do a question and answer session and hopefully answer all those questions you have. So as you hear something that comes to mind, please note that on that green paper, and we'll remind you towards the end of the night to actually turn those in, and we'll address those questions. Last housekeeping item, you may notice we have the interpreters here. This is also being video recorded. If you're up front, you may be on camera. Just be aware of that. These presentations, all the presentations that we're doing, will actually be available on our website, vcemergency.com, and we'll talk extensively about that tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Bruce Rendall from the Ventura County Watershed Protection District.
Thank you, Patrick. As he said, I'm with the Watershed Protection District, which is a part of the Public Works Agency, and we're going to kind of give an overview of some of the risks and hazards we're facing after the fire and what we are doing about it to keep you informed and keep you protected. Hello? We'll do the low-tech version. All right, what are the causes of debris flows? Debris flows are when, can happen after a fire when the soil and the vegetation doesn't respond like it did before the fire. The root system that the vegetation has in the soil is actually burned, and that stabilization from the roots and everything else is gone, and it doesn't hold the soil nearly as well. The top layer of extensively burned soils are what we call hydrophobic, which literally means afraid of water. So the water will bead up, run off, and not infiltrate into the soil, and causes the water to focus and concentrate in areas where it becomes to be, create mud flows and debris. After it kind of focuses and gets into an intense concentrated area, it can literally scour all the soil and the subsoil underneath, which is rocks, debris, even boulders. They're completely undermined. And the problem we also run into is when you have a certain amount of rain, it produces a certain amount of runoff. But when that mud gets into that water, it can double the amount of flow that is coming down, so it causes significant problems on those. This is kind of a visual of what we're talking about, how the steep slopes that have been burned repel water and force it down into other areas where it collects and cause the undermining of the soil and causes the mud flows. The picture on the right is about 2 inches of a piece of soil, and that top thin black layer actually repels water, kind of like the old Scotch Guard on fabric. It just will bead up and move off to some other area and cause the problems in another location. Now, what are we looking for to cause, that could potentially cause these mud flows? We use the standards from the USGS, or the United States Geological Service, who's done extensive studies on debris flows after fires. And the number you're going to hear an awful lot, both tonight and on the website, is something called a ½ inch per hour. So if you get a ½ inch in 1 hour, that could potentially cause mud flows off of these burned areas. It's not just 1 hour. We also look at, can you get 2/10 of an inch in 15 minutes, 3/10 in 30 minutes, all on down to 3 hour totals. To give you some perspective of what happened in Montecito, they got over a ½ inch in 5 minutes. That was the intensity they were facing. So how are we kind of monitoring, taking a look, and responding to the fire and the potential flooding? Well, they have some maps up here. They'll have maps in the back. But we've broken down the areas into what we call zones, planning/evacuation zones. And this is a town hall meeting for zones 3, 4, and 5. 4 is generally the city of Santa Paula. 3 is the area to the west of that, almost to the city of Ventura. And 5 is the area that burned toward Fillmore. We're breaking these down because they respond a little bit differently. They get different kinds of rainfall. They have different burns patterns from the fire. And we can break down the responses and the information to very specific zones. This is a small list of some of the hazards we're looking at zone 3, 4, and 5. Patrick's going to talk to you about vcemergency.com, and you can go to your specific zone of where you are and have much more information, detailed maps, lots of information on what is impacted in your zone. This is kind of a quick list. I'm sure most of you know, if you've been here long enough, how some of these areas can cause problems. Flooding and bank failures along Santa Paula Creek and Orcutt Canyon. Also along Highway 150, especially as badly as 150 got burned along the sides of that. Slope failure and debris flows. Slope failure is related to debris flow where it just gets saturated with the moisture that comes in. It just slides down the hill and can block the roads, or even worse. The Fagan Canyon debris basin can be filled with mud depending on the storms we get. We are in the process of enlarging that now, so that it'll provide more protection. Obviously, for those of you who remember the 2005 floods, you remember the flooding down 12th Street, south of Highway 126. The airport got damaged, and Timber Canyon and O'Leary Creek. And again, more of these details will be on the website. We can get more information on that. Some additional flooding, inundation maps are being produced that will be on the website that you can take a look at. So what is the watershed protection doing? We have numerous debris basins throughout the county. They're cleaned up, ready to go. We've got them as empty as we can get them. And in some cases, like I said, we're enlarging them. We're improving the clean outs for the channels. And that's where the channel focuses and goes into a culvert or a bridge. And we have removed and cut down, burned and killed trees so those branches don't break off and get plugged into the bridges or the culverts. We're also putting metal poles that will catch some debris that comes in to keep those culverts from being blocked. We've improved our displays on our website, which we'll show you in a few minutes. We've added new rain gauges so we can monitor the rain in real time. And we've lowered our alarm settings for debris flows. What that means is on our display, the numbers literally change colors on us as the intense rain comes through, and we'll show you an example of that. And we've lowered the threshold of when those color changes to reflect the debris flow from the burn areas. So we're preparing for that so we can monitor it and give the best information for the Sheriff's OES department for that. We've improved our forecasting. We work very closely with the National Weather Service. They give us forecasts and predictions of the rain that will come forward. And we talk with them all the way up until just before the storm and during the storm to see what they're seeing, what their predictions are, the meteorologist. We also hire our own private forecaster, and they produce what we call the qualitative precipitation estimate. And we shorten that to QPF because we can't say it that often. What that means is we're going to predict how much rain is going to happen when. And from that information, we put it into our models, and we predict how much water will come down the streams in the various locations based on the predicted rainfall. That is updated every 4 hours that we run, and we get constant updates of what we think is happening. We also compare those with the information we get from the National Water Model and the models from the California River Forecast Center up in Sacramento. So we have lots of information to tell us what potentially could be happening, and we monitor what is actually really going on in the field. This is kind of a comparison or example of what the National Weather Service can give us. This was before the Montecito storm, and they said, this is what we think the rainfall totals will be in this area. And they focused almost 6 inches in the mountains of Ventura and above Montecito, down to about 2 or 3 inches nearer the coast. And they hit it pretty accurately. This is a look at our gauges. It looks a little confusing right now, but the dark red outline, that's the outline of the Thomas Fire. Every one of those rectangles is one of our gauges or the County of Santa Barbara's gauges. And that's what I told you about. They change colors when they reach a certain threshold. The green is what is below the thresholds. Yellow means it's approaching those thresholds. And red means they have exceeded those thresholds. So we're monitoring that constantly. It's updated in real time and watching in the Emergency Operations Center. It's available for the public. You can watch it on a browser as well if you want. So debris flows can happen very quickly, and we'll emphasize this later. You have to be prepared, and we'll talk about that quite a bit. You need to be prepared for what this happens. This was what actually happened to Montecito. This was 3:30 in the morning. We were monitoring the displays and the radar. We had lots of green, a little bit of red off to the side, a little bit of yellow. We're watching the storm cell come close, and as it approached, 16 minutes later, that happened. Every one of those gauges you see in red exceeded those debris flow thresholds that you saw. 16 minutes, it happened that fast. And very quickly after this, they had the debris flow. So what can you do? And I'm just going to try and touch on this because you're going to hear a lot more of this because this is the most important thing. You have to be ready. Ready, set, go for flood preparedness. Be aware of the weather forecasts, weather radios, websites, lots of apps for your phone and computers of what the potential rain is coming out. Have to be aware of that. Know your local hazard areas. We'll be highlighting those on the website, in maps. Know the hazard areas near where you are. And then, unfortunately, that's zone 3 or 4 or 5, not zone 1. So that's the website that Patrick's going to be talking about. This is an example of a very short example of what you might see in zone 3. And the first thing you'll see is those rainfall totals occurring in real time, and these are the ones focused in your particular zone. These are of all those gauges, these are the ones that directly impact zone 3. And you'll have a map below that shows some inundation areas. That's the light blue near the bottom. You can zoom in and see detailed right down to the street level, and shows the boundaries of where we're talking about. Lots more information if you scroll down from what this picture is, what the hazards are, what you can do, what information, are there evacuations, what's going on. As you can see right there, evacuation status. Right now, there's no evacuation status. And just like on the map, the table, the rainfall totals will color code as it progresses through the storm. if we have one. Individual preparedness. What does ready mean? That's 2 to 4 days before the storm happens. We'll be monitoring the National Weather Service and local weather forecast. You should be doing that too. Monitor any information from your local officials, from the sheriff's office or the police and fire, and have your evacuation plan. We'll have a lot more information later on what your evacuation plan is. Set. This is about 12 to 24 hours before the rainfall hits. That's when we're pretty confident we know a pretty good idea what the rain's going to be, where it's going to be, how intense it's going to be, and we'll make our decisions based on that. Sign up for what's called VC Alert. Remember that. We'll have detailed information on how to sign up for VC Alert coming up. Prepare for evacuation. This is not just have a plan in the back of your head. Have the bag in your car, have the bag, your car filled up with gas, etc. And monitor the rainfall forecasts. And then go. This is 2 to 4 hours before the storm. Monitor information from local officials. They'll be telling you how they're going to be doing that, how they're going to be doing evacuation orders, and leave to a safe place. At this point, this is the end of our presentation. And remember, the debris flows can happen in a lot of areas. If you run into emergency, call 911 or the hotline that they're talking about. This is Highway 101 from the 2005 storm. And you can see mud was coming over a lot of different areas and some people got trapped there. So be ready and be prepared. Thank you.
All right, well, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Patrick Maynard. I'm an emergency manager with the Office of Emergency Services, and my piece of this presentation tonight is to share with you what we actually do prior to a storm and during the storm across the county to analyze and determine whether or not we need to evacuate a particular area. So prior to every significant storm, we as public safety, we get together. The city of Santa Paula is part of that process, both from the police department and the fire department side. The sheriff's office, the Ventura County Fire Department, our partners from the American Red Cross are part of this conversation. We all get together and we hear from our watershed folks, we hear from the National Weather Service, and we look at the potential of that storm. If any of you follow weather, sometimes you may hear a storm 7 days out, 5 days out. It sounds significant. And then the closer it gets, that forecast breaks apart. It's no longer as significant. Or maybe it's the opposite of that. And as the storm moves closer to us, we start to see it intensify and grow in size. What we're doing as a team is analyzing that storm as it makes its way towards us, and we're trying to determine what level of impact that storm's going to have on us. What level of impact will, of course, ultimately determine what level of evacuations and or notifications we plan on doing. In Ventura County, we do that leading up to the storm, but we really get serious about it and start to make some final decisions at the 12 to 24 hour mark. And the reason being is there's a lot of different models that are used out there to forecast storms. Those models tend to come into alignment and all start making sense in that 12 to 24 hour window. So the closer that storm gets to us, the more accurate we can be in our decision making. So again, we wait for that 12-hour period to arrive. Bruce mentioned this earlier. What we're really looking for, especially in a post-fire environment, is the potential for rainfall at an intensity greater than ½ inch an hour. So in a post-fire environment, when we've got burned hillsides, anytime we see rain in excess of ½ inch an hour or more, it is likely we will encounter debris flows. Not to say it can't happen at a lower intensity, but ½ inch tends to be the mark where we start to see things move. If you look at what happened up in Montecito, for instance, they received well over 3/4 of an inch of rain in less than 15 minutes. An incredible amount of rain. It was nearly 4 inches an hour, basically, at that intensity. That type of rainfall anywhere will cause issues. Again, we set our benchmark based on USGS guidance, and that's ½ inch an hour. So one of the things you're looking at the website, as Bruce mentioned, is this rainfall potentially forecasted to exceed ½ inch an hour? We're monitoring that. We're looking for that. We're looking to advise you of that. However, we want to empower you all to also follow what we're doing via our website. We want you to be watching along with us and seeing what we're seeing. So if the time comes that we ask you to leave your house, we ask you to evacuate, you understand why we're doing that. We're not just doing it on a whim. We've done a ton of analysis ahead of time and actually closely evaluated the potential impacts. Once storms actually make landfall, so I'm just going to, again, give a hypothetical example here, but once a storm makes landfall, let's just say it doesn't look too significant. We're not seeing rainfall rates, or we're not forecasting rainfall rates in excess of half inch an hour. Maybe it's forecasted to be a quarter inch an hour. Maybe as that storm system crosses over the Santa Cruz Islands, for instance, we observe significant rainfall. During the January 8th storms, we actually observed rainfall at 0.95 inches, so basically 9/10 of an inch in less than 15 minutes. That's an incredible amount of rain. If we see a storm making landfall that has increased in significance, we will take action, and that's where the Emergency Operations Center is activated. We're in contact with the City of Santa Paula, all of our other stakeholders, and making them aware of these circumstances. And again, this is done as a team. There's several people at the table. It's not just the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. It's not just the Fire Department. This is done collectively. So there's always collaborative thinking going on behind the scenes to determine what level of impact this may have. And what's really tricky here is there's a lot of variables. We can't predict what storm drains are going to clog. We can't predict where somebody put sandbags maybe they shouldn't have that diverts water into your backyard. We can't predict all those things. That's where we need your help. We need your eyes and ears out there. When you see a storm drain that's clogged, when you see something that's not looking good, let us know. Maybe we don't know about it. Bruce mentioned the zones earlier. How many people live out in the Wheeler Canyon, Aliso Canyon area? By show of hands. So a handful of you. How about City of Santa Paula residents? Majority. And then how about residents from Zone 5? So basically Halleck Road east of Fillmore. One of you. All right. So we've split this up, as Bruce mentioned, into zones, specifically to address the different hazards in these zones. So a lot of times as a storm cell makes its way through, based on forecasting, we can tell, hey, you know what? This is more than likely going to have impact in Zone 5. And here's why. There may be flooding issues or drain issues at a particular location. That allows us to better communicate with you in advance of the storm and say, hey, if you live in Zone 5, here are the issues we're prepared to respond to and potentially forecasting even. In addition to that, the National Weather Service, anytime they issue a warning level alert, they will say, residents in the Thomas Fire Burn area, which could be from Santa Paula, of course, all the way up to Santa Barbara, specifically those residents in Zone 4, be prepared for X, Y, and Z. So it allows us to get a little more specific. Typically, they just say the Thomas Fire Burn area, and again, that could be from here to Santa Barbara, and that's a large span of land. So we tried to narrow this down just a little bit and enable both us and the Weather Service to talk with more specificity. Our website, vcemergency.com. If you leave here with one thing tonight, please remember this website, vcemergency.com. Bruce did a great job of highlighting some of the specific hazards that we know exist in these zones, but there's additional ones that are on that website. And those may change. We might start to see after our first couple of storm systems that make their way through, hey, we just started developing flooding in a particular area. We're going to update that website with information. We're, of course, going to do other alerts and notifications. I don't want to steal one of the other speakers' thunder, but we will continue to notify you. But please, check that website out and check it regularly, especially as storm systems are forecasted, especially as they make landfall and exit the area. Up at the top, you'll see a Thomas Fire Burn area. You click on that, and there's a drop down, and you can click on your zone. And within that zone, you're going to find very specific information about the zone, the hazards, where you can go to get sandbags, all kinds of good stuff. And there's just another screenshot of it. Notice at the top, the two local weather stations for this area, Santa Paula Wilson Ranch and Fagan Canyon. Again, those are updating in real time. So that's great information. You can also see seasonal rainfall in there as well. One additional thing, in the event that we do any type of evacuations across the county, maybe it's just in the city of Santa Paula, God forbid, maybe it's somewhere else, who knows? We always activate this information hotline. And now it's not fun when you get woken up at 3 in the morning and you get asked to leave your house. You get a mandatory evacuation order, maybe it's somebody knocking at your door. And a lot of times that order doesn't carry a lot of detail. We're trying to convey a message quickly. Hey, there's something going on, you're in imminent danger, you need to leave quickly. Sometimes you have questions and maybe you're not quite sure. You know what? I know they said mandatory, but should I leave? Is it necessary that I leave right now? If you have questions, concerns, maybe don't quite understand what it is we're asking you to do, call this number. There are operators standing by anytime the EOC is activated. They're there to answer your questions. That's what they do. They're there to tell you if you're under evacuation. They can tell you where the local shelter is. They can tell you where you can take your pets if you have pets. They can provide you a ton of information. That hotline's available in both English and Spanish. Please write that number down. It's 465-6650. And again, that's activated during all incidents. So it's a great number for information. When you actually get an alert, a lot of times, especially if it's an evacuation order, it'll appear from that number. And the reason being is when you get that call on your phone and maybe you don't answer, you think, it's just another telemarketer. I'm going to not answer that one, right? You call it back, you're going to get, this is the information line for the Ventura County Sheriff's Office or whatever agency it might be representing that particular day. Bottom line is you're going to reach us and you're going to be cued in to, hey, you know what, maybe I need to check in. What happened? There's recorded information on that line, and again, you can actually speak to somebody by calling that number. A couple other numbers. Again, I'm here, I'm speaking both for the county area and also the city, and the city's going to speak later. But if you see something that maybe you don't think we're aware of, please reach out to us. If it's not an emergency, we ask that you call our non-emergency numbers. There's the sheriff's dispatch line. Get in contact with us. You are our eyes and ears. We need your help. You know as well as I do, this burn area is very large, and with that comes a lot of variables, a lot of potential. And you may be seeing something that we're not seeing. So our goal tonight, again, is to provide you information, but also to empower you to help us in keeping you safe and keeping the rest of the residents of Ventura County safe. And that's all I have. So up next, I'd like to invite Gil Zavlodov, and Gil is the Alert and Warning Coordinator for the Ventura County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services, and he'll be talking about alerts.
Good evening, everybody. We'll get started shortly. Let's see if the clicker works. Yeah, it works. Clicker works great. So like Pat mentioned, I'm the Alert and Warning Coordinator for the County of Ventura. And what I want to do now is cover a number of things that we have available to you. So earlier on in these presentations, you heard of what is public safety doing prior to the storms coming. What I want to talk about today is what do we do to communicate that information to you? And we have three primary systems that we use to communicate with you. The first one being VC Alert. VC Alert is our local emergency notification system. Show of hands, how many people are registered with VC Alert? Amazing. Almost the entire room is registered. Fantastic. How many people, show of hands, received a VC Alert during the Thomas fire? Okay, good. A majority of the room did receive our alert, so it was working. Another system I want to mention is the Wireless Emergency Alert System. It's a federal system. It's when you get those weird sounds to your cell phone. If you have a smartphone and it's a weird sound, you don't know what it is, you usually get them for Amber Alerts. Show of hands, how many people have received those weird text messages? Great, so I'll take a little time to talk about the Wireless Emergency Alert System. And the last one that's been around since the 1950s is the Emergency Alert System. This is during the civil defense period when we interrupt radio and TV. So I'll explain those as well. And lastly, I'll talk about the National Weather Service has three criteria. They call them storm alert levels: a watch, advisory, and a warning. And I'll take a little time to explain what that means and what actions you can take when they issue those alerts. So VC Alert. What's great here in Ventura County is VC Alert is a regional tool used by all 10 cities. So the majority of the people in this room are City of Santa Paula. The city is using VC Alert along with the other 9 cities. So we have one tool, we call it one system, VC Alert. Now what's great about VC Alert is residents can opt in, and my next slide explains how you can opt in, but allows you to add up to 5 addresses. So your primary residence, you want to add that. If you have loved ones that you're concerned about, you can add their addresses as well. If you have children that go to school, you can add those addresses to the system. You get to control your profile. What's also great about the system is you can add multiple methods of communication. You can add your landline phone, and I'll make a little notation. Landlines, we buy the emergency service listing data from AT&T, Verizon, and Time Warner. We buy the listed numbers for residential and commercial, as well as unlisted. So we have those numbers already in the system. What we don't have is your email and your cell phone. So for those folks who didn't raise their hand, I highly recommend that you register for VC Alert. Like I said, it's our primary system that we use to communicate. It's all based on your geographic location. You don't have to worry about receiving alerts for other jurisdictions. We can get very granular with our alerts. We can alert one home, we can alert one block, we can alert one neighborhood, we can alert a whole city. And just to give you a little example, for the Thomas Fire, we sent 66 VC alerts. We issued 36 mandatory or voluntary evacuations to over 100,000 contacts, and we evacuated over 90,000 people. The system worked very well and very efficiently. Okay, so how do you register for VC Alert? We have a number of different ways. Everybody received a bag, our vcemergency.com bag. In there is a brochure for VC Alert. So if you're not registered, we want you to spread the word. Get your loved ones, get your friends, get everybody to register. If they live in Ventura County, they must be registered with VC Alert. Okay, so you can go to our website, vcalert.org. You can also text. This is a new feature that we enabled about a year ago. You can text the word VC Alert. If you have a smartphone, text the word VC Alert to 313131. You'll get a text message back. It'll redirect you to a form that you can fill out your information, and you can register that way. And lastly, you can always call us. We have our hotline number, 805-648-9283. There is somebody that will take your phone call, and we'll do it manually for you. We want to make sure that everybody is registered with the system, and there's nothing to inhibit that process. Okay, wireless emergency alert. This has been around for the last 3 or 4 years. And show of hands, how many people received a wireless emergency alert for the Thomas Fire? Perfect. What's good about this system, it's a very powerful system. We have the ability to hit every cell phone in Ventura County if we wanted to. You don't have to opt in. You can opt out if you want to. I encourage you not to opt out, but you're automatically opt in if you have a smartphone. And it's not as specific as VC Alert. VC Alert, we can get very specific on an area that we want to notify. With the wireless emergency alert, because it's based on cell towers and private infrastructure from, for example, Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T, we can identify a polygon and we can send our message out, and there's a chance that there might be some bleed over. Meaning that because of where the cell towers are positioned, it might go a little bit farther than what we really want. So we have to be very careful with the wireless emergency alert. And I can tell you, we don't issue these very often. Thomas Fire, we issued 2 of them because we felt it was critical. And what we did was we told you that there was a wildfire in the area, and we wanted you to visit our website. So very powerful tool, another tool in our toolbox that we can use. And I'll mention a little bit later, the National Weather Service, it's federal. So the state has the ability to hit every cell phone. The National Weather Service does as well. And I'll explain that a little bit later. And I just wanted to give you an example of if we had a flash flood warning, and I'll explain what that means a little bit later in the slides. If the National Weather Service issues a wireless emergency alert, this is the exact message that's going to appear on your phone. So I wanted you to be aware of it so you know who it's coming from and what to do. So what it says is flash flood warning, this area till they'll provide a time frame for you of that warning period. Avoid flooded areas, check local media, and then they'll say NWS, which is the National Weather Service. And so we always try to, when we send any emergency alert, to let you know who it's coming from. For those folks who live in Santa Paula, it's going to come from Santa Paula Police Department or the Santa Paula Fire Department. So we always say who the jurisdiction is issuing that alert. And National Weather Service, the California Highway Patrol, they'll identify themselves as well. Okay, emergency alert system. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a system that's been around since the 50s. It's been used heavily, and what it does is it interrupts the AM, FM radio, and then here locally in Ventura County, we have 3 stations that our alerts will go over, and it's KVTA 1590, KHA 100.7, KMLLA 103.7 FM, and that's for the Spanish channel. And right there I have an image of how that emergency alert is going to appear on your TV. For the Thomas fire, we issued 2 of these emergency alert systems as well. This was a massive fire that destroyed infrastructure. We used every tool in our disposal to get the information out, to let you know that there were issues and what to do. Okay, so last part of my slide is the National Weather Service. We're here to talk about storms. The National Weather Service has 3 criteria for storms, and I'll read them out. The lowest level is a watch. During a watch, conditions are favorable for flooding, and at this point, what they want you to do, this might be the 72-hour period. We're 3-4 days ahead of the storm. They see something that has potential. At this point, we just want you guys to be aware and stay tuned. Okay, this is the ready phase. Now, advisory. Specific weather event that is forecasted to occur may have nuisance flooding. And what they want you to do is just be aware and exercise caution. And lastly, the most important one is a warning. If the National Weather Service issues a warning, it's because flooding is imminent or flooding is actually occurring. And what they want you to do is move to high ground. Take action at that point, save life, okay? That's the most critical one, is the warning period. And this is the end of my slide deck, but I want to end with this one note. Please do not wait for us to take action. If you feel that the situation you're in poses a threat to you or your loved ones, don't wait to receive a VC alert, a wireless emergency alert, or emergency alert system message. We want to empower you. We want to give you the information that if you're in danger, take action to save your own life. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll hand over to Patrick.
All right, thank you, Gil. Up next, I'd like to invite Captain Todd Inglis of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. And Captain Inglis will be discussing evacuations.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So as Gil talked about, we have 4 methods that we get out information for you, reference the evacuations. The ones mostly that we'll be dealing with is the door knocks and the VC alert, which Gil talked about. And when it comes to the voluntary evacuation orders, it usually will come out in a VC alert, and it will tell you the evacuation order and what they want you to do, and give you some information and other materials to go online and check with. And as far as the voluntary evacuation order, the threat to lives is not yet imminent. So the group of professionals that are getting all the information and the data and doing all the statistical information on the storms or whatever incident that we're dealing with in the county will want to issue the VC alert, and it's basically to give people a heads up that there's something coming in that possibly could lead to a mandatory evacuation down the road. But I think what's important with the voluntary as well as the mandatory is you folks know your areas and where you live and your property a lot better than law enforcement going there for evacuations at times, late at night. And a dirt road to us that goes to a couple houses might be a dirt road that goes to 5 or 6 different stables with horses. And you know best when to get your livestock, your horses, and your property, and waiting for a mandatory evacuation probably isn't the best thing to do at times, depending on the roadways in and out, because a voluntary could go to a mandatory, and if that's when you decide to move livestock or animals and trying to get trailers back in and friends trying to help you, it actually could hurt the emergency services that are trying to get in and save lives and help you, whether it's a flood, fire, or the incident. So, you know, the folks before me often talked about just having a plan, and truly, you know, your gut feeling, you know, we're going to do everything we can to get you the information as quick as we can, excuse me, but it's important that if you get that feeling that it's time to move on, that you start your plan and process. which goes to the mandatory evacuation. There will also, the VC alert will coincide with it. And at all possible, if it's safe for us to do it, we do door knocks where we go and we'll document the doors and the residents we make contact with, how many people are in the house, and give the order that there's a mandatory order that you need to leave the area. If not a door knock, it might be from a loudspeaker from a car, depending on the population of the area that we're going to. But we're going to do everything we can to reach out and make sure that on top of the VC alert, that you're notified that there's a mandatory evacuation in that area. And obviously with the mandatory, the danger is imminent. There's a danger to lives and people in the area. And once you are escorted out or you leave under a mandatory, the residents will not be allowed to go back in until that order is lifted. What we do with the Sheriff's Office as well as Santa Paula and this last incident with the fire, the entire county and the National Guard, once we do a mandatory, we put people in there to look after your property and to patrol the streets. And these are people that aren't part of a regular deployment for patrol. These are people that their only job is to stay in this geographical area and look after the property. And like I said on this last one, we had from Simi Valley all through the county, the National Guard, everybody came together and helped out, and then everybody went as a team to Santa Barbara to help them after they had the debris flow. So I'm very comfortable that our county, as far as law enforcement and fire and emergency services, when the time comes, we come together and we're going to look after the areas and the people that we take care of. There's also a shelter-in-place order. Again, it'd go out on VC alert, and it's going to tell you basically to stay put at your residence. Normally, stay away from windows, get to a secure spot, and stay in place until we can get some other information and find out if there, how much danger there is for you to leave the area. Could be a gas leak, it could be an earthquake, but at the time, the message is stay where you're at. Let's assess what it is, and then we'll go on from there if we're going to have you evacuate out or stay in place. With these evacuations, most likely there'll be some type of a road closure. We have soft and hard closures. The soft closure is basically we're preventing anybody from the general public from going into an area, and we will allow residents with IDs that live in the area to come back and forth. There's been questions in the past regarding medicines or going back to get a pet. When we're doing these things, we're not trying to inconvenience anybody. We're just trying to do the best we can to make sure people are taken care of. And if we have to take somebody back in to get medication or to get an animal or to do something or get a vehicle, and have the resources that it's safe, then we'll do what we have to do to make sure people can get stuff from the residents if they need to be. As far as the hard closure goes, again, we're not going to allow the general public to enter the area, and depending on how long-term it's going to be, we could bring in barricades and other means to shut the road down and not necessarily use law enforcement personnel that could be used in other places in the county as far as resources. But with that said, 409.5D of the Penal Code allows your media and the news to enter these places to do their job if it's not considered a crime scene. If it's a crime scene, then we could prevent the media from entering as well. And with that, as we've been talking, the website of the vcemergency.com, again, has everything about evacuations. It has the definitions. It has what to expect, as well as all the other information that we're going over here tonight. And again, the information line, the 805-465-6650. When there is an incident or evacuations are going on, somebody can answer that phone and take care of whatever needs or answer any questions. And with that, that is my evacuation.
All right, thank you, Captain. And up next, I'd like to invite Daryl Smith. Daryl's an emergency manager as well with the Ventura County Sheriff Office of Emergency Services. And he's going to talk about some general preparedness stuff. One important takeaway from what Captain Ingalls was just saying, again, a lot of the presentations tonight have been from the Sheriff's Office, but he mentioned this, and I'm just going to reiterate it. The same process applies to the City of Santa Paula residents. So the same types of evacuations, you more than likely see City of Santa Paula police officers at your door, but depending on the circumstances, you may see sheriff's representatives. You may see Simi Valley police representatives. You never know depending on how this whole thing plays out. So just be prepared as he described, and hopefully it all works out.
Good evening. One thing we like to do from the Office of Emergency Services is talk preparedness to our communities. So tonight we'd like to talk about building kits. And if you don't already have a kit, it's a good idea to build one and be ready and be prepared. So you want things like food and water, flashlights, emergency radios. If you have pets, one thing people forget is bring some food for your pets. Medications, 30-day supply is good because you never know when you might get back into your residence. Make a plan. How many of you have plans out there? You know how you're going to evacuate, where you're going to go. Are you going to go to the shelter? Are you going to rely on the shelter? Or do you have family or friends or a house you could go to that's out of the area and away from danger? Your utilities, do you know how to shut them off when you leave your residence? Work plans. In other words, if you're at work and the emergency happens, what are you going to do? How are you going to contact your loved ones? Do you have an out-of-state contact everybody can call, or even in-state that may be far enough away? These are the things you need to consider, and even more so if you're rural and you have livestock and everything else, you need to think of these things ahead of time when you get the evacuation order, what you're going to do. And then we want you to stay informed, as we've been talking about. We have a website called readyventuracounty.org you can go to. It's got all the information you may need. It basically mirrors the handbooks you were given tonight, the preparedness guides. It also has many other resources. It has information on how to sign up for VC Alert if you haven't done that already, or if you want to add additional phone numbers, addresses into it, you can do that as well. So what we want to do is prepare, get a kit, and stay informed. One other thing we have is an app now. You can put this on your smartphones. It's available for your Apple and Android products. It's called Ready Ventura County, just like the website. And on there, it'll run you through the checklist on how to prepare, how to make a plan. And when you tap on these things in the right picture there, you can check them off as you accomplish them. And then stay informed. All the items on the right-hand picture there, you can tap on, and it will take you right to vcemergency.com or Ready Ventura County. And it also has a list of phone numbers for emergencies and things like that, too. So thank you very much, and remember to get a kit, make a plan, and stay informed.
Thank you, Daryl. Just a reminder, if you have questions regarding any of the presentations tonight and you've written any of those questions down, there's OES representatives that'll be on the sides here. Feel free to pass those questions in, and following the next presentation, we'll actually do our best to answer those, get them all sorted out, and get answers out to everybody. So with that, our last presenters for tonight are Division Chief John McNeil and Assistant Fire Chief Norm Plott from the Santa Paula Fire Department, and they're going to talk to you about the Ready, Set, Go program.
Good evening. I'm, as introduced, John McNeil, a Division Chief. Keep going this way, right here, with Ventura County Fire Department. I also want to point out we have from Ventura County Fire Department Battalion Chief Jeff Shea in the back, and we have Captain Raul Garcia, and I believe, I can't see in the dark over there, we have engine companies from Santa Paula Fire here, Engine 81 and 82, I believe. And Chief Plott will be up here to follow me in a minute. Just pointing out the members, so when we break out afterwards, feel free to come and discuss any of the issues with us. We're welcome to those conversations. Lots of information tonight, lots of great, valuable information tonight. My guidance to you is how do we process this information and put a plan together to take action if necessary. So the Ventura County Fire Department has a Ready, Set, Go campaign or a program or a process to help us through this. And when I say us, we're all part of a team here. So your fire department has team members to accomplish our role within this potential event. You have your role as residents in the area to carry out your role in this, and together we will succeed with preparation and a solid plan. So use this as your guidance. It is a Ready, Set, Go, probably about a 4-page document that has some valuable information in it. And I just kind of want to explain some pointers for you on the Ready, Set, Go, but how the fire department uses Ready, Set, Go in an event that could be caused from a debris flow or landslide. So the ready phase of this, what you can do to get ready, and let me back up just a minute here. So the fire department and any public safety is going to prioritize the priorities when responding to some type of emergency like this. The priorities never change. It's always the protection of life, the preservation of property, and I'm going to add one more to this, and it's consider isolation. We saw some slides in here where we had debris flows and mudslides across our highways. The area we're focused on in the 4, 5, 4, and 3 zones of the map, we have Highway 126, Highway 150, major thoroughfares, and if we get mud flows across those, you can imagine the isolation issues we have. Now, that may not have a threat to life or even potential damage to property, but it could isolate you for a while, and you may need to survive on your own without resources. So if we keep that in mind, when we put our plan together, hopefully that'll prioritize things for us. So the ready part of this, what you can do to be ready is set yourself up for success to preserve your own life and your loved ones, maybe neighbors, someone nearby that you have influence on. You can do this by being prepared. You can do this also by preparing your property to where it could prevent damage from any of these events that we're talking about. One way to do that is sandbags. And I want to mention that the sandbags are available at any county fire station. You can come by and get your own sandbags. We'll fill them for you, and we'll even give you instructions on how to use them and where to place them. There's more detailed information in the Ready, Set, Go pamphlet. It's one way to do it. There's other suggestions on prepping your property and getting ready for the next phase of that, which would be the set part of it. How the fire department gets ready, we're constantly training. Now, we'll focus our training on an event that may require some type of rescue or property preservation in a debris flow situation. So our crews, our rescue crews, our fire crews will get ready by familiarizing themselves with those issues, locations. We have pre-plans that we will familiarize ourselves with and have that fresh in our mind for the potential event. When we get to the set part, after we've been listening to some weather forecasts and we realize that there's some potential here, we're going to take that next step and we're going to get into that set mode. The set mode puts us in a posture where we're a little more alert to what's going on. So we'll be listening to, and my suggestion to you is to listen, as it's been suggested, to the weather forecasts. Get your situational awareness up, because the next step after that is the go part, and we don't want to be hesitating when it's time to go. When you get an alert, when you get any kind of message, when you get a door knock, when you get anything that puts you in a position where you feel like you need to go, we don't want to hesitate. We don't want to have you hesitate. Prior to getting to the go, fire department's getting set by joining these conference calls with all the agencies that have been represented tonight and speaking to the team concept again. We use the valuable information the fire department does from all the experts that have spoke before me. We process that. We calculate our next move. We join conference calls. We're talking real time with all the players that have suggested whatever move it is. We also enact our pre-plans. We'll add additional staffing if it's warranted. We'll pre-position that staffing based on the information that we have. That's our set mode. And then when it's time to go, all of us as a team, we have our roles. If you're asked to evacuate, please heed those evacuation orders. Get yourself safe. Remember, the top priority is preservation of life. We're going to be responding in those situations. When it's go, that means the 911 calls have come in, and now we're responding to the Ready, Set, Go part of this playbook, if you will. So I just really wanted to speak to the team concept and how your role in this, our role in this as fire department and all the agencies involved is what will bring success is if we understand our role, practice our role, prepare for our role, and then we all execute it together. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Norm Plott. I'm Assistant Fire Chief for the City of Santa Paula. And I would just like to say that, over a little bit, Steve? Okay. I'd just like to say is that, we haven't seen 285,000 acres burn off in Ventura County. I mean, that's the largest fire. So the amount of area that's impacted is huge. And typically with a rain event, it affects not only, it'll come in like it did up in Santa Barbara, but it affects a large area. And so as that storm moves through and causes problems, when they say, you need to get out, is that the road that you went to your house that morning may not be the road that you can get out in the evening if you wait too long. So you need to take the warning seriously. They're watching the rain gauges up in Santa Paula Canyon and all the different areas, and if they think you should get out, you should get out. If you live next to a hillside, the things that have been brought up today, it's more likely than not that you will have a problem if you get the type of rains that require a warning. So, and the other thing is that this is just not a one-season event. I mean, until we get enough rain and enough vegetation back on the hillsides, we're probably looking at least a couple of years, a couple of different rainy seasons that will be at risk. So, this is not just, we're going to get through April and then we're fine. We're going to have the same problems next year. So what I would recommend is that if you're in an area that normally floods, take advantage of the time that we have nice sunny days. It seems like we can't get enough rain to spit out of a cloud right now, but at some point it will rain. So take advantage of the sunny days. Go to the stations. We have sandbags right over here next door at Community Center, right behind Station 82. Get your sandbags, even if you just put your sandbags hold them in an area, and then as the storm looks like it's coming, get your sandbags out so you can keep the mud and debris. You want to keep water and mud moving. You just don't want it to build up. So keep that water moving and mud away from your houses. And then, I have some of my firefighters that were up in Montecito, and some of the pictures that they sent was just incredible in that situation. So we've got a good group of teams here between OAS and the city, Santa Paula Police and Fire and County Fire and Sheriff's Department. And I can't tell you that you really need to make sure that you take this information seriously, prepare, get ready, and then hopefully we get rains in a more controlled manner. We get some green back on the hillsides, and we don't have a problem. But just by the amount of burn and the amount of vegetation that's been lost, it's more likely than not, and I can't overemphasize that we will have problems if we get a rain. And we're a mobile society. That's another thing, is that if you travel between Santa Paula and LA, there's a high likelihood that 126 will be cut off. If you travel between Santa Paula and Ojai, probably a higher likelihood that 150 will be shut down. So these are areas, Timber Canyon, we've seen it even just normal years with plenty of vegetation where that overruns Highway 126. So keep that in mind too. We're a mobile society. We all work. We all have family members that go to school. So those areas will be impacted. And then the debris, we have a lot of trees that have been damaged because of the fire. So, heavy winds could bring trees down and cut off normal egress routes, especially if you're somebody in a more rural area, of the city or the county. So keep those things in mind, that it's we're here for the long haul. Prepare, take advantage of the sand and sandbags, take advantage of the sunny days, and then just pay attention in the event you get one of those warnings. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So just to recap before we go into the question and answer session, I just want to bring up a couple of really important points that we talked about tonight. And First and foremost, half an inch an hour of rain in any location has the potential to cause a debris flow. And that's particularly important if you live in an area close to where the Thomas fire burned. So if you hear in the forecast a potential for half inch an hour of rain or more, be concerned, be alert, go to VC Emergency, follow that website, listen for instructions, because there's a high potential that something could potentially happen, high potential. There's a high likelihood that something could happen near your home. So vcemergency.com, very important. In addition to that, go to that website, you can search your address. So you can go to that website, type in your address, it's gonna drop a pin on that map, and you can see precisely where your home is in relation to all the lines on that map. Very important that you know which zone you live in. So if you're not clear on which zone you live in before you leave here tonight, come see any one of us at the back table. We'll look on that map, we'll bring clarity to that. And again, that information is available on VC Emergency. So we're gonna jump into questions. I'd like to invite our speakers back up from tonight, and we'll get through these. If you have speaker cards, please turn those in the back. They'll collect those and we'll get those added into the mix as well. Again, the reason we're doing it this way, we want to make sure that we read these questions aloud because this is being videotaped. These presentations, all the presentations we're actually doing, will be posted on vcemergency.com once we wrap all this up. All right, so our first question is going to be for Bruce. And Bruce, the question is, on the maps, what do the blue lines mean?
Which, was it one of the slides I had, or?
The model lines.
Oh, the blue areas?
Yes.
Okay. What those are areas of what we call inundation. And let's give you a little background for that. The light blue is if we had about a 10-year storm, if you're kind of familiar with that notation, about a 1 in 10 chance of happening every time, those blue areas. If every culvert was blocked and every bridge was blocked and you doubled what a typical 10-year storm would be, that's where the water would go. So that's kind of what we're really worried about, because in the next 3 to 5 years, if something like that happens and we get a lot of debris flow, that's potentially where the water could go. The other blue areas that are on the map that you'll see is zoomed in, that's if we got a really severe 100-year storm. Same conditions. You double that flow, and then every bridge and culvert is blocked. That's where everything could go. That's worse than what you would consider your typical FEMA 100-year floodplain. This is the areas we're potentially concerned about.
Thanks for that, Bruce. This question's in regard to wireless emergency alerts. So wireless alerts, are they based on area code or location or phone number? So I'm going to hand that over to Gil.
For the wireless emergency alert, it's not based on zip code. Like I said, you are automatically opted in. It's based on location. So if we identify a polygon and you're outside the polygon, you won't get an alert. However, if you enter into it, then you'll get the alert. Okay?
Thanks, Gil. All right, an additional question regarding alerts. What can be done to help avoid missing an evacuation alert? For example, if you're out of the area or maybe you're just not home.
Okay, for VC Alert is based on your home address. So that's why we encourage you to register your home address. Now, if you're out of the area, we want you to have your cell phone. So if your address is being impacted, if it's under an evacuation order and you're not home, that's why we need your cell phone. And then you could be out of the area and still get our alert with VC Alert because it's based on that home address. Okay?
Thank you for that, Gil. Another question. When we lost power during the fire, the cell phone system became overloaded. When the Fed alert came out, so the wireless emergency alert that goes to all the cell phones, it said to go to the website, and then the website wouldn't download. I heard that a bunch of county servers were down. What has been done to avoid the problems in the future? So that's partially accurate, partially inaccurate. What I'll tell you is this. When we trigger that wireless emergency alert, that creates a ton of web traffic. That's telling everyone in the area to go to that website. And it was a tremendous draw on that server, absolutely. There were periods of time where people received what's called an error 500, where that page didn't load for some reason. We recognized that rather quickly and switched to a different page and redirected it. I can tell you since then, there's been some IT changes that were made to account for that. It's an enormous amount of traffic that, quite frankly, would probably compromise a lot of websites. But now, knowing the magnitude of that, we've made some changes. So that was definitely a learning point for us. Not something we'd done before. We don't issue these wireless emergency alerts. In fact, that was the first one we'd ever issued. So a very unique situation and definitely a takeaway for us out of the Thomas Fire. Again, it's something we have since fixed. We've shored up. We've done a ton of optimization to the VC Emergency website with the assistance of our IT folks, and it should be good to go. We've actually even done load testing on it. So we're pretty confident in its ability to be able to provide out information. Another question. Santa Barbara County has changed the phrase voluntary evacuation to pre-evacuation. Are you considering this? I can tell you that we have spoke both prior to Montecito, and we have a meeting planned in, next week, actually, to talk about our evacuation terminology. Generally speaking, for our evacuation terminology to be successful, we have to engage in a very active education campaign to the public, i.e. doing these types of town hall meetings, having representatives here explaining to you what a voluntary evacuation means, what a mandatory evacuation means. When you go to vcemergency.com and you look at the maps and you see all that stuff, as you scroll down that page, you will see very specific text on that page in both English and Spanish that outlines what a voluntary evacuation is and what a mandatory evacuation is. What I can tell you here in Ventura County is we have been using that terminology for years and years and years. It is kind of a state standard to utilize that. However, nothing's to say that it can't be improved. So again, as we move forward through this process, right now we plan to continue to use that. As we continue to discuss that, if we determine there's some better wording out there, we will definitely work to educate the community on what we ultimately choose. But for now, what we plan on utilizing here in Ventura County, and again, that includes all 10 Ventura County cities, is both voluntary and mandatory evacuation. Another question: many died in Montecito, voluntary evacuation areas. How do you avoid that scenario here? I think any one of us could answer bits and pieces of that question. Does anyone want to take a stab at some of that? Okay.
Montecito was devastating. I'm sure we saw a lot of it on the news. I personally witnessed it. I was up there that morning it happened with some of our rescue teams from Ventura County. What I saw is the debris flows ran from the mountains to the beach. The evacuation zones ran perpendicular to that. So what we're doing in public safety is we're always learning from previous incidents. Not finger pointing, not saying anything about what happened in the past, but what we're going to take moving forward, we're going to match evacuation zones with what our anticipated flows are. So that is one takeaway. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but it is one thing that we learned going up to Montecito and seeing what happened.
I echo what Chief McNeil said, and I'll just tell you, with the size of this burn area, there are so many variables that go into creating such a deadly situation like we saw in Montecito. Granted, it was a post-fire burn area, meaning that the vegetation was missing off those hillsides. But what I can tell you is anywhere that we see that type of rainfall, whether it's a post-fire condition or not, you will see devastating effects. And really that's why it boils down to educating the public, having the public active and engaged in this monitoring process. And when we say it's a good time to evacuate, we're not just doing it on a whim. Follow our advice. We know something. We're educating you on our process and how we conduct analysis. Listen to us, follow those orders. And if you have questions or maybe you don't quite understand or you have concerns or maybe a difference of opinion, call our hotline, find out what we're thinking. Maybe there's a small detail that you've missed, but please do not dismiss it. We need you active in this fight. It's a team effort. Chief McNeil mentioned that earlier. It takes all of us to get through these things safely. Not just us, not just you, but we got to work together on that. This question is a bit of a Santa Paula question, a bit of a watershed question, so I'll do my best to point it to one of you guys. Is there anything being done about different debris, trees, leaves around the Fagan Canyon flood channel? There's a barranca there near the cemetery. Is there any level of concern about that particular area?
The Watershed Protection District has done a reconnaissance of every single one of the channels that we have jurisdiction over that were affected by the fire. We have looked at all of the outflow areas from those channels and looked at, as I said before, removing trees, removing branches, removing dead debris that could plug the channels, could plug the bridges. And we are further investigating future action for that. We will have a lot of information on what we'll be doing, and we'll be posting that publicly, information of what we have done and what we have accomplished to do that. But yes, we are looking at every outflow of our channels that come out of the burn area and their potential impacts on bridges and homes.
All right, thank you, Bruce, for that. Can you simplify and tell people to evacuate well in advance of forecasted rain? And we kind of discussed this concept earlier, and there's something that we run into on the emergency management side and public safety in general that we call evacuation fatigue. And it's the old we cry wolf. And hey, we think something's going to happen. We go ahead and pull the trigger on a mandatory evacuation, and thankfully nothing happens. Chalk it up to, hey, they're just being cautious. They're doing what they're supposed to do. And then it happens 3 more times. And by the 4th time, you're like, you know what? Those first 3 times, nothing happened. I'm going to take my chances this 4th time. And then that 4th time is when we have a debris flow. That's one of the things that we weigh very heavily prior to issuing evacuation orders. And as I mentioned earlier, we don't do that on a whim. We take into consideration every aspect of that storm. And if we were to evacuate folks too far in advance, our accuracy level would diminish substantially. So our ability to forecast and predict a storm's impact on an area greatly increases the closer that storm is to us. And if we wait, or if we do it too early, if we do it 3-4 days in advance, we'll be wrong a lot. We'll actually have great difficulty in being very accurate. Again, that storm might take a different trajectory. The storm that impacted Montecito, we watched as it marched in off the coast. We watched it cross Santa Cruz Island, and at one point, we were actually thinking that it may hit the La Conchita area. And it was really, again, the way that storm tracked that ultimately led to it going to Montecito. There's so many variables in these situations. If we do things too far in advance, again, our accuracy level will go down. So we look to that 12 to 24-hour window to issue these evacuation orders or alerts, and that's why we need you as residents to be responsive to those. When we issue those, we mean it. There's another question and or comment here that says county zone maps are not as specific as the Ojai and Ventura city maps. Why not? So actually all the zone maps are very specific. You'll notice, and again, it's hard to show the entire burn area just because it's so large. If you go to the website, you can actually zoom in and out. You can see the aerial imagery behind it. It's far more graphically appealing than what you see on the static map here. All of the maps have the same level of specificity. Some of the jurisdictions have opted to do some, what we refer to as just tactical level planning. That's kind of kept internal just for planning purposes. But anything of importance is very consistent across the entire region. There's a number of different map products that are out there. But again, if you go to our website, I encourage you to do that. Type in your address, zoom in, and you'll be able to see with clarity any of the modeling, those blue lines that Bruce explained earlier. You'll see very clearly where the zone lines are and all that good stuff. This question's for Daryl. Are there any extra preparations that could be done to protect young children? So many young children are killed during the slides, or so many young children were killed during the slides in Santa Barbara.
I think one of the things I did not mention, that in part of making a plan, you need to communicate that plan. And when I say communicate, everybody in the household needs to know what the plan is. Maybe even your children or other relatives that don't live with you need to know what your plan is. So if something occurs during your evacuation, they can backtrack and help you or find you. If you help get the children involved in building those kits, and then it doesn't hurt to practice the plan. How are we going to get out of the house? Where are we going to go? Are we going to load up the car? Are we going to load up the truck? Who's getting the animals? Walk your children through it. If the children are prepared as well as the parents, then you're that many steps ahead in the evacuation process.
Thank you, Daryl, for that. All right, our last 3 questions. This one says, is there any way to tell if one hillside is more susceptible to mudslides than another? If so, has such analysis taken place? So I'll try not to bore you with too many details and just kind of succinctly explain what has been done so far. So following the fire, CAL FIRE sends out what's called a WERT team. It's a watershed emergency response team. That team goes out and assesses the different burn areas of the fire. They assess what they refer to as values at risk. And with that, they do some mapping type stuff for us and also a report. And that report calls out some vulnerable areas. Again, it's done with a very high level view. Most of the folks on that work team aren't local individuals. One of the awesome things that we have here in this county with great cooperation is we have representatives from the Public Works watershed side. We have local representatives from the city of Santa Paula. We have team members that have historical knowledge on what areas have flooded in the past. And oftentimes these things repeat themselves. So we get maps that are produced by these state teams that come in, and some of them have specificity and some of them don't. Some of them you might see this big red blob and it doesn't tell us a lot, whereas Bruce could provide us information on, hey, here's where this floods, here's what causes it to flood. We've taken all these different things into account and really distilled it down into one simple message for everybody. And this goes into something else I'll say, but look out for that ½ inch of hour per rain or more if you are in a burn area. Don't concern yourself with whether you were in a moderate burn area or a severe burn area. You may see some other reports that say the burn severity was high in this particular location. The bottom line is this: in a post-fire environment where there's been burned vegetation, despite the severity, with rainfall over ½ inch an hour, we may experience issues. And it's likely we will experience issues. Whether it was high severity, low severity, again, there's so many variables with such a large burn area. It's really too complex for people to try to take each one of those things into consideration. Just know that if there's rain forecasted in your area in excess of ½ inch an hour, you may experience issues. And again, that's the approach that we've taken with this. Just because some of these maps and things that we put out there, we have a hard enough time educating people on just this ½ inch an hour concept, let alone trying to explain burn severity and all these different aspects. These reports, granted we do this all the time, they still make my head hurt when I read them. And they're very complex. If there's a specific area that you have questions on that you feel that we could have addressed better, please talk to us offline. We'd be happy to look at that and talk to you about that in more detail. But again, ½ inch an hour. One of the other questions that was received was, do we know what started the Thomas fire? And I'll hand that over to Chief McNeil.
We don't know yet. But what we do know is we had 2 starts that make up the one Thomas fire. And if you reference the map up here, the yellow area references the perimeter of the Thomas fire. And where the number 6 is, represents the area of Koningstein Road in the Upper Ojai. That was a second start about 45 minutes after the initial location, which was just upstream from Stucco Park in the Santa Paula Creek there. So 2 starts, we do know. We have a team of nearly 24 investigators representing quite a few agencies investigating the cause of this. And from what I understand, they are in the final phase. It is up in Sacramento going over the final review and should be released shortly.
Thanks, Chief. There was one other more so comment than question. It's regarding some trees in Santa Paula Creek, and we'll get that to the right person. So it's not really a question, it was just a comment, and we'll pass that off. I think that's all the questions we received. Oh. Can a mudslide as devastating as Montecito occur in zones 3, 4, and 5? Was there some issue unique to Montecito that made it so deadly?
I will use Patrick's answer, yes and no. It was an incredibly severe and unlikely event. It was a severe rainstorm that had a ½ inch of rain in 5 minutes. It had an incredibly severe fire, and that was one of the most intensely burned areas, was just right above Montecito. The storm, a thunderstorm, came right up and pushed up right against the hill, those steep mountains right behind Montecito, and the combination of all 3, the hillside just let go. Now, that being said, do all three of those conditions occur here in these zones? No. However, an incredibly intense amount of rain or a larger volume of rain could occur here and could cause severe mudslides that could put you in danger. Remember, one thing about Montecito, in those areas, they only got about 2 to 3 inches of rain. It just happened intensely. So if we got a storm that got 5, 6, 7 inches of rain and came fairly quickly, a lot of that hillside will come down and will cause mud flows. During the rainstorm, I don't know if many of you know of it, but in the upper Matilaha Canyon, there was not a lot of population and not a lot of facilities, but we had tremendous debris flow. A lot of mud, debris, trees came down and is pushed into Matilaha Dam. So yes, those conditions can happen. It was an extreme event that happened in Montecito, but we could have some severe damages and mud flows here in the county.
Thanks. I'm not going to take a guess of whether it can happen here, but I do want to relay a story from the Montecito. When I was up there and I was talking to a lot of the local residents in the high impact areas, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there was a gas explosion at about the same time the high intensity rainfall caused a lot of the damage. I assume it dislodged some kind of gas line and caused an explosion, burned one house, maybe two. But when you talk to the residents in the local area, they heard the explosion. This is a mandatory evacuation zone, and a decision was made not to evacuate for whatever reason, but the gas explosion woke them up. They got up, realized what was going on around them, and got out. And I don't know how many people got out and saved their own lives and maybe their neighbors' lives and their families' lives with the gas explosion. But it brings the point, when all this information is processed and a calculated decision is made by the authorities for a mandatory evacuation or any level of evacuation, it's based on a lot of good information. So not only getting the message out via all the methods we heard here, but the gas explosion, I guess what I'm trying to say is please listen to the message. I'm not sure a clean way to get that out. We're not going to cause a gas explosion to get your attention, but what it did do was save quite a bit of lives, and I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And just to add to what Bruce and Chief McNeil both just said, I will tell you there are some differences. Typically, when we do these presentations, our geologist is here. The geologist was present during a lot of our assessment work that we do internally. Bruce and his team are primarily hydrologists, great knowledge, they have the same expertise, but one thing that the geologist has shared with us that is kind of interesting about the Montecito situation is that particular area, geology-wise, is comprised of a lot more rock than we see in zones 3, 4, and 5. There are some rocky areas in 3, 4, and 5, but not nearly as rocky as what we see in Montecito. So every watershed responds differently. That's why, again, when we say there's so many variables that go into this, every watershed is going to respond differently. Some watersheds will absorb more water than others. So it's really hard to tell. I will say that not so much in this area, but in the eastern portion of Ojai, not quite into upper Ojai, but the eastern portion of Ojai, there are areas there geologically that are very similar to what we have in Montecito. So fortunately for you, being in zones 3, 4, and 5, those aren't primarily concerns that we have down in this area, but I will tell you, those are things that we will be educating the Ojai residents on this weekend, specific to their area. And again, that geology plays into that very much. I think that's all of our questions. I'll just say,
No question. But kudos to all of you for 281,000 acres being burned and only 2 people died. You people are wonderful. And I thank you very much for what you've done for us.
we appreciate that. That leads me into my closing, and I'll just say this. There's a handful of us up here tonight presenting, but this entire process, from the time that fire went out until here we are, standing here before you today, there has been a village behind the scenes working to ensure your safety. And that process, again, started the day of the fire. It was going on far before the fire, but it continues. And just the amount of cooperation that we've had at the city level, at the county level, through our electeds. We have state Cal OES representatives, Jenny's in the back, and we even have FEMA at the federal level, at the back row there, FEMA representatives here. We have had a tremendous amount of support across the board that have been collectively working on this. And I'll tell you, it really does take a village to make this successful. Our goal is ensuring your safety, and that's what we strive for every single day through this group. So help us be successful, help us keep you safe. Please listen to our messages, please go to our website, please call if you have questions. Let us know if you have questions. We want to be there to answer those questions as best as we possibly can. And with that in mind, there looks like there's one more question, and then we'll close it.
Actually, it's a concern for the safety of all of you. When I got the mandatory evacuations, fire was right there, the power went out, and as I left, I wanted to know how to let anybody who was trying to warn me know that my property was safe and we were out, and you didn't need to worry about us. I'm more rural. Is there a way to indicate on your door, on your gate, whatever, that we are out and the property is safe as far as people and whatnot?
Chiefs, I could do a generic stab, but I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, that's a good one. What color?
That's not good. I'm pausing right now. Because we usually suggest when you do leave to leave your gates open, leave a light on. I know it doesn't, make it easier for us to find it and determine if someone is in there and then evaluate what we could do to protect the property. So I'm not sure of any complete marking system or anything. I know that the CERT program has some okay placards when they do some type of exercises, but I'm looking for advice from you guys if you have anything more formal. Sounds like Patrick's got it.
I'm going to give it a shot. So I'll tell you what, we appreciate the heads up. We appreciate you letting us know that you're out, but depending on the circumstances, whether we know you're out or not, we're still going to do our best to try to make contact with somebody at that residence. That may mean sending a deputy to the door initially to attempt a mandatory evacuation. If a deputy or a police officer makes contact with you, they're going to document that. And maybe if we don't have the time to do it, but the fire department manages to get there, whether they know you're out or not, they're still going to attempt to make contact with a property owner. So just know it's nice to know that you're gone, but if somebody arrives at your house, they're going to do their best to try to contact someone either way, just to be safe. With the dynamics of this situation in the Thomas fire, there are so many people coming and going. This fire was moving so fast, it was hard to keep track of, and the only fail-safe way to do that is to confirm at every single residence that we possibly could, and that's what was done. Again, if circumstances didn't enable us to do that, if the fire was already at the location, unfortunately, if the property was already engulfed in flames, then we obviously have to respond accordingly. But we're going to do our best under all circumstances to at least confirm that somebody's gone. There's no way to tell you to call us and let us know or anything like that at this point in time. So hopefully that answers your question. It looks like there's one more.
Yes, it's regarding rocks. I live in Zone 4 on Fuchsia Lane that is right along the hill that burned. So it's just completely naked. But I see probably thousands of rocks on that hill now, and some of them are big boulders sitting right on top. So that's what I and my neighbors are worried about.
Sure. So I'm going to pass it over to Chief Plott in just a second. I'll say this before I hand it over and echo, having been there with our county geologists and had the opportunity to take a look at some Santa Paula areas. One of the good things about all the properties in Zone 4, while there's certainly some hillsides in close proximity to homes, what we are fortunate is that watershed, that area that's collecting the water, is fairly small. Unlike Montecito, where you have a larger area to collect water and eventually dump it into an area, a lot of these watersheds in that particular area are small. In some cases, there are some decent setbacks too. So that definitely plays to your advantage. Not to say that there isn't a potential for any type of debris flow or just maybe some nuisance rock fall in your backyard or into someone's property, some isolated flooding, things like that. But the potential to cause a severe debris flow, something similar to what we saw in Montecito, would be, I don't want to say it's impossible because nothing's impossible, but it's not likely given the size of the watershed there. With that, Chief, do you want to add any specifics about that particular neighborhood?
Yeah, I would just say that you know, when it is raining, that's probably the time that those rocks will loosen up and start to fall. So, you know, maybe just caution during the time that it is, where you are getting some heavy rains, that's probably not a time to be in your backyard. You know, you know, giving it a wide berth at that point in time, because, you know, when it does rain hard, that's when that soil loosens up. And, you know, if you travel up and down the highway, you know, you start to see rocks as soon as it starts to rain. And so, you know, those rocks can loosen up. So, you know, some of the netting and that sort of thing, you know, up on the hillside is a possibility you could do to, you know, potentially catch some of those rocks from falling. But, you know, just be aware that there's a higher likelihood when it actually is raining until we get some vegetation back on those hills that'll hold those rocks in place.
All right, couple more questions. I'm sorry, the lady from FEMA was next.
So I just want to let you guys know we've got a 5-person team. So we have a 5-person disaster survivor assistance team in the back. After the meeting convenes, anybody that's had damage, not sure whether FEMA might be able to assist them, already applied and wants to check their application status, you can see us in the back. Thanks.
Thank you. And then one last question, we'll close it.
By that same hill on up Ohio Road more, I want to know if there's any plans by any agency to come in and spray seeds on those hills to get the vegetation growing faster.
Talk about hydroseeding.
We have no, in the Watershed Protection District, we have no plans for hydroseeding. We're looking at the channels and the creeks in there. We are not planning on doing anything in hydroseeding. There's
Does that help the vegetation get growing faster?
possibly, but private landowners have been doing that. Some of the cities have been doing that. But I don't know if anybody from Santa Paula is looking at that, but the Watershed Protection District is not planning on doing any of that.
Is anybody from Santa Paula planning on that?
Not at this time.
So I can tell you, it sounds like some of the areas you might be describing might even be private properties, but maybe even in the Caltrans right away. In some circumstances, Caltrans will actually hydroseed those areas, but in those really steep hills, there's quite a few studies. While it makes us feel better to hydroseed them, the hydroseeding on very steep hills actually doesn't do much. It's very difficult for that seed to actually to grow there successfully. It was done by a private property owner up in the La Conchita area. He did it on his own accord. I know the city of Ventura did it. Not so much for the growth portion, but to contain erosion type issues and to keep dust down and things like that. So again, it's very difficult to determine the level of success and to really do a lot of hydroseeding. There's also a lot of other biological concerns that come along with that and what we introduce into the environment and other things that play into it. It is looked at. Again, if you want us to take a look at your specific area, we might be able to provide a little bit more information. So be happy to chat with you offline. With that, I think we've covered all the questions. Again, 2 things. ½ inch of rain an hour or greater. Pay attention to that in the forecasting. Go to our website, vcemergency.com. Hopefully we all remember that after tonight. Thanks for your time. Have a great evening. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. All the representatives from all the agencies will be here until you guys are gone, so please feel free to come up and talk to us. Otherwise, thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good night.